In 2009, Forbes magazine wrote an article that featured me in their Heroes of Philanthropy edition. Something I was actually a little uncomfortable with, but you couldn't quite stop them. I'd been working with my family's business at the time, and we were in the process of opening a hotel. And at the same time, I'd also been involved with various nonprofits, and had actually found out, too, that so many of the migrant workers, the men and women who come to Singapore to clean, to build, to service Singapore, were actually paying anywhere from 6 months to even to 2 years of their salaries to labor agents. That was not acceptable. So my friend Peter and I thought about trying to create an alternative system, a different way to recruit people. And so we created a new process that would cap fees, that would tell the people who are coming here exactly what they were getting for anything that they were paying, and would actually help prepare them before they came to manage their expectations, and actually welcome them once they had arrived. It was important to me that we were able to help them feel at home. So it was a little more effort than usual, maybe, but this was a business that I could influence in a small way for the better. And I didn't do it to be a philanthropist. I did it because it was the right thing to do. And maybe that's what being a philanthropist is all about. So what do you think of when you hear the word philanthropist? Who or what comes to mind? Tech giant, wildly crazy entrepreneur, super savvy investor. I guess in many of our minds, it's sort of the rich and the powerful who give away millions, if not billions, to rid the world of preventable diseases from which millions die every year, or maybe rebuilding cities, or maybe creating education and investing in disenfranchised populations. But what's the problem with this picture? I think the biggest challenge is that philanthropy and the idea of being a philanthropist is such a far cry from everybody's everyday life. Day jobs, childcare, managing homework. But I'd like to challenge this idea about how philanthropy and the loving of humanity and the exercise of one's values to benefit another is actually something that can happen every day by anyone, anywhere, in small, simple, personal, and meaningful ways. I'd like to challenge the idea that the person you'd least expect could be a philanthropist, and that the sum of many small parts has an enormous impact, and that everyone with some skill or talent can share. And that together we can create a new culture based on these ideas. So, how many of you have raised funds or funded something on a crowdfunding site? Okay, reasonable proportion of you there. A lot of us think of these sites as actually being very commercially oriented. But did you know that in 2012, the online site, Kickstarter, actually exceeded the National Endowment for the Arts in terms of funds distributed to arts groups in the United States? And as of this year, Kickstarter has raised $1.5 billion for over 80,000 art projects that gave aspiring artists, theater practitioners, musicians, filmmakers, and the rest a chance to realize their dreams, with an average contribution of $25. Perhaps, though less obvious, are hidden heroes whose life choices can really inspire us. A couple years ago, I visited Myanmar, and I met this woman, Hannah So. She was living about an hour and a half outside of Yangon, and she ran an orphanage with 19 children from the ages of like 3 months all the way up to 18 years old. The older kids helped the younger kids. The place was completely spotless. Everybody's toothbrush was really neatly lined up in the washing area. And then when I asked her, who supports you? She told me, a church in Singapore and my 2 sons. And my first impression was, of course, that her 2 sons were like doctors, lawyers, or accountants, or something, maybe in Yangon, or maybe even expats somewhere else. But I asked her, and they were actually expats. But one was a security guard in a shopping mall, and the other one was a construction worker. And so later that week, when I came home, I glanced at that Burmese security guard, and I saw him with new eyes. Could he have been the philanthropist that funded Hannah's home? I imagined them eating sparingly, not spending very much on personal luxuries, and probably saving 50% of their salaries to remit back home. And then I thought, that's pretty much what Bill Gates and Warren Buffett decided to do with the Giving Pledge. Back at home, last year, we actually also undertook this fascinating experiment. We found 2 brothers, Kwee and Kahao, aged 9 and 11. And these 2 brothers had posted, or I guess their mother had posted on social media, that they were giving away their ang pao money, collected during Chinese New Year to the Singapore Cancer Society. I guess they had some family-related resonance with the cause. And these 2 brothers had just decided to do that. And so we seized the day and we said, hey, let's share this idea. Let's tell other people that maybe they could do that too. Even if it's 1%, 5%, or 10%, of whatever they could give away from their ang pao money to support a cause that just represented something that their family cared about. And the results were astounding. In the first 20 days of Chinese New Year, donations through our online site were up 73% year on year. It was a simple, fun, and meaningful idea that everyone could participate in, and it made all the difference to the nonprofits that they supported. But giving is a lot more than just money. It's time. It's loving your neighbor. It's person to person. And it's the offering of our skills. So a great Singaporean actually is a photographer, Bob Lee. Some of you may have heard of him or seen him too. And he was asked to teach photography to the blind. He was called one day by a charity, Dialogue in the Dark, and given this intriguing offer. Sponsors had come in to help provide cameras, printing services, and space and everything. And Bob began to teach. And one of his students was an elderly gentleman called Uncle William, and he produced his first photograph, as you can see here, kind of like cut off legs of someone and a dustbin. And Bob asked him, What's that about, William? We didn't quite get the composition quite right. But Uncle William told him, well, actually, it's about the dustbin. And Bob said, okay, well, how does that actually work? And he said, well, every day when I take this route, to go to work, I look for that dustbin because when I hit it, it tells me to turn so that I can cross. But one day, this cleaner actually moved the dustbin, and I need him to put it back. And Bob realized that sharing his skill gave him a view into a whole new world, that he was seeing the world with fresh eyes and with deeper compassion as a result. So maybe you can take photographs, maybe you can cook, maybe you can do accounts, maybe you can write stories, or maybe you're just a really good listening ear. How could you use your skill in service of someone else? My friend Wally uses his company and his voice. He's a filmmaker, and he raises awareness, or he's sought to raise awareness when he's not making videos of weddings or doing beautiful food photography. that he decided he was going to do something to combat this haze, which has kind of been enveloping, our whole region recently. And he decided that instead of just like moaning about it, like most of us, that he was actually going to crowdfund for masks and for air quality monitors. And he was going to go with volunteers down to Kalimantan to distribute them and help educate the local people there. And he did this at a time when, of course, most of us were just moaning about a 400, PM 2.5. And he told me that when he went to Kalimantan, the monitors actually didn't work, but the actual PM 2.5 levels there were actually in excess of 2 million. Society is made better because of Wallies who share their voice, Bobs who share their skill, and families like Kahau and Kawai who teach the next generation the values of generosity and the love for humanity. Society is better because of the two nameless sons of Hannah for practicing their radical love. So my dream is to see all these parts and pieces connected in a big network where skills, voices, funds, ideas are all shared in one place in our city. And what if we were able to actually create a marketplace where the whole city comes together and we create for our common good? What if neighbors knew what was needed and that those needs could be met in a timely way with available resources? We all have some margin to spare and to share. We all have influence and voice, and we have friends and colleagues and family members to reach out to. And I believe that we all have dreams of being lovers of humanity in a city of good. My colleagues and I are now imagining and trying to build this giving platform so we can be Wally's, Bob's, or Hannah's children, or we can support them with our voice, our skills, or our funds as an expression of our love. And we are well aware that technology is not the solution, but purely an enabler for philanthropy and acts of love to be expressed. So look around you. I think you'll see a philanthropist waiting to be discovered. Thank you.